When you look at the key elements of East Bayfront, we think it'll be Toronto's waterfront jewel. 55 acres right next to the downtown core. Be 5,000 market units, of which 20% will be affordable rental. About 2.5 million square feet of commercial and employment space. Again, unlike West Don Lands, which is primarily residential, East Bayfront has to be a mix of employment, residential, entertainment, cultural. It is really the gateway to the waterfront for the city. So it's a much harder precinct to plan and to implement. We're building in a continuous water's edge promenade. And again, public realm will be 25% of the land area. We're also insisting on low-scale development at the water's edge. There's been a real public backlash against towers lining the water's edge. So our plans really start 4 to 6 stories at the water's edge, escalate up 10 to 12 stories at Queensquay Boulevard, and up as high as 37 stories at the point towers that act as the gateways or portals on the arterial roads that come down to the water's edge. We're also insisting on non-residential uses at the key grade. So at park edges and water's edge, we do not want to allow residential use at grade, because our fear is that that residential use at grade will unofficially privatize public space. So we want retail space, community space, cultural space, entertainment space, spaces that will attract footfall but won't privatize the public realm that's right next to it. We have a continuous promenade along the water's edge. I think 32 different cities to try to decide what the right dimensions were. I think we argued for a year over this. The eventual outfall was 19 meters from building face to water's edge, with an additional 5 to 8 meters of boardwalk out over the water. In this particular case in East Bayfront, the boardwalk actually will cover up the stormwater retention tank, which we'll put in the harbor. It has 2 levels to accommodate different kinds of uses for spill out, for cafes and so forth, and for walking. And our community retail uses really are envisaged at street level, supported by transit, generous sidewalks, cycling lanes, and so forth. Again, adopting a transit-first approach in East Bayfront, with every residence being no more than 5 minutes away from a transit stop. So we had a competition for the foot of Jarvis Street. That was won by Claude Cormier from Montreal. It's called Sugar Beach, which sort of pays homage to the sugar plant across the slip from it. The 3 main features there are the urban beach, a sandbox, effectively, the water's edge promenade that goes through the park, and a plaza space that accommodates uses by the adjacent new office building that's being built by TEDCO for Chorus Entertainment. The other major park is Sherbourne Park, again, the foot of Sherbourne, that opens up to a park space. It's about 4 acres, being designed by Greg Smollenberg out of Montreal, or out of Vancouver, pardon me. This will be quite spectacular. The southern part of this will have an open lawn area for civic events, and the north portion will be much more of a community or neighborhood park. But the central feature that's quite interesting is that there's a channel down the park with a pond, and that channel will actually treat stormwater. The stormwater that's held in the tanks in the harbor will actually be pumped up to the north end of the park, run through UV treatment through water artworks, and down through the channel and out into the harbor. So it's actually doing dual duty as park, artwork, and public infrastructure. So let me just show you the sort of land we're working on in East Bayfront. The north part of this is privately owned, but you can see we have 3 publicly owned pieces. Dockside, Parkside, which is the tall building just to the right of the park, and Bayside. Our full build-out's probably going to take 10 to 15 years. We're assuming that reasonable condominium growth in Toronto of about 12,000 units per year. Last year was 23,000, quite spectacular. This year's about 15, but if you assume 12, and the downtown gets 30%, we think we can absorb between 300 to 500 market units per precinct per year. So that gives us a 10 to 15 year build out for our first 2 precincts. In Dockside, which is well underway, that includes about 1.4 million square feet of office and institutional space. That includes the new headquarters of Chorus Entertainment, being built by TEDCO, which is the Toronto Economic Development Corporation. And we're also putting next to that the future home of George Brown College. And that was our answer to the animation issue for February. Bring students down. Students are there all year round, and that'll support retail, it'll support cafes and so forth. And of course, once you get that going, then you get the retail starting to spring up, as opposed to currently what you have on the waterfront is quite a deadly spot between sort of November and April. The Parkside development is the one that goes to the north of Queensquay Boulevard, just to the east of Sherbourne Park. Our selection process started there in March 2008, and we're now trying to finish up our discussions with developers for December of this year to execute the agreements. That's about 700,000 square feet of GFA. This was partly city land and partly land that we acquired. It would be primarily residential. The last piece in East Bayfront that's going out to the marketplace is what we call Bayside. This is a much larger piece of land. It's about 1.7 million square feet of GFA, mixed use, office, residential, retail, cultural, and so forth. It's a 13-acre site, and we've gone through a two-stage process: an RFQ to sort out sort of who the most eligible and competent developers are, and then for that shortlisted group, ask for an RFP. Now that RFP is a fairly expensive proposition, so we're trying to make it a fairly short list. So we've got 4 or 5. In this case, we've got 4 shortlisted teams for Bayside. We also saw a need to take back the water's edge for the people and really provide a unified design for Toronto's waterfront. We have a 3.5-kilometer waterfront, and it has been designed in a very sort of choppy fashion. In fact, in some cases, when you go down there, you're not really sure whether you're in public space or private space. So it's really important for us to design a new waterfront that would be our signature around the world, but also would tell the people that, in fact, this is your space, that you would read it from the street furniture, from the handrails, from the surface treatment, that you'd know that's public realm. And if you go down there today, that's not what you see. You see, sometimes you're not sure whether you're in the condo's backyard or if you're in the park. So this was really important. We conducted a worldwide competition. We had 38 teams submitting from around the world, almost every continent in the world. And we selected a firm called West 8 out of Rotterdam. And the key components that they delivered in their design were this connection of the ends of the quays by timber bridges, the filling in of the heads of the slips with timber public spaces, and most importantly, I think, the taking back of Queensquay Boulevard and creating a linear park, the length of Queensquay Boulevard, where the south lanes are now. So currently that's an arterial road that has 2 lanes each side of the tram lines. We're taking back the south lanes and turning that into a linear park. We already have expanded the boardwalks along York Quay and John Quay. Again, that was a bit of a prototype. And one of the challenges you all face when you develop waterfronts is keeping the public motivated. And it's a 4 to 5 year program to get to where the shovels hit the ground, and people don't appreciate that in the public. And so there's always this public cynicism about nothing happening. So what we did was said, let's give something back real quick. Let's get out there and give some projects back to convince the public that this time it's really happening. And so we did York Quay and John Quay. We did the Western Beaches Watercourse, Cherry Beach. So a number of projects were done outside the precinct planning exercise. It takes 4 or 5 years to go through consultation, design, zoning, approval, lobbying, appeals, and so forth. But so to convince the public and get public support and press support and political support, let's do some quick wins and get the stuff out there and get it appreciated by the public. So we did these particular promenades on York Quay and John Quay to show people what it would look like and really capture people's imagination. We're now also working on the rest of the West 8 proposal, new heads of slips. So we're filling in Spadina Wave Deck was opened in September. That shows you a before and after shot. And the next shot really shows you a little more aggressive wave deck that's just starting construction now. So to date, we've invested about $69 million in the waterfront. It's a sum total, I think, of about $300 million investment to date. Another project we're looking at and working on is the naturalization of the Don River. There's been discussions about naturalizing the mouth of the Don River for probably 15 to 20 years. And where the river enters the harbor should be a very special space. And today it's certainly not that. We conducted our second international competition. This one was won by a firm called Michael Van Valkenburg and Associates from New York. And their actually winning design is quite interesting in that it leaves the channel, the Keating Channel, currently as a hard urban edge and creates a new river to the south of that. And that certainly creates much more waterfront space, much more park space, much more public realm. It'll add actually kilometers of parkland. After that, we look at the Portlands. It's about 850 acres, another incredible opportunity, a 20-minute walk from downtown. And we're currently working with the city to develop an implementation plan that allows us to develop that progressively and still allows them to use the land for interim uses to promote economic development in the meantime. One of our further on projects is Lake Ontario Park. When you think of Vancouver, you think of Stanley Park. The two are almost synonymous. We want to create a park in Toronto that will be synonymous with Toronto. So when you think of Toronto in the future, you'll instantly think of Lake Ontario Park. This is a 588-acre site. It includes Tommy Thompson Park, which is a wilderness area. It will include marinas, all kinds of recreational uses and water uses. That's about a $380 million investment over probably 20 or 30 years. It's currently sort of an ad hoc collection of all kinds of different uses, and the design really is an attempt to unify it all and create a park that has a certain, cohesive signature.